Hi, this is Sana Harun and you are watching Voice of Canada. First, discuss the top stories. The Montreal Canadiens are headed back to the Stanley Cup final for the first time since 1993, the last time the franchise lifted hockey holy grail. Montreal Canadiens fans flooded the streets to celebrate the team's wins over the Las Vegas Golden Knights, sending them to the Stanley Cup final for the first time since 1993. The Canadiens clinched a berth in the title series on home ice for the seventh time since the league expanded in 1966-67 and the first since defeating the Islanders in Game 5 at the Montreal Forum on May 24, 1993. Montreal advanced to the Eastern Conference Final in both 2010 and 2014 but lost out to the Philadelphia Flyers and New York Rangers respectively. We are trying to keep it going one game at a time and not think things too much far ahead, said Lekonen, the overtime hero. I feel like we showed up today and it's a big win for us and we have 4 more to go. Fans gathered outside the Bell Center in the hours before puck drop on a sun snake. I feel like we showed up today and it's a big win for us and we have 4 more to go. Fans gathered outside the Bell Center in the hours before puck drop on a sun-soaked Montreal holiday evening, with many wearing Canadiens jerseys, waving the province's fleur-de-lis flag or both. Montreal will learn its Stanley Cup final opponent when the Tampa Bay Lightning host the New York Islanders in Game 7 of their semifinal series on Friday. Montreal Canadiens forward from 1989-94 Stephen Lemieux says they may be underdogs, but the Herb's level of play as a team in these playoffs is what's most striking, and it reminds him of his 1993 team.
I like to say it is not the team with the best players that win championship, but the players with the best team. And it seems that 93 we were just about that. And so far the Montreal Canadiens, they are underdog, but team-wise they show that they can achieve some great things. There is some similarity, of course. The first thing is trailing 1-3 against the Maple Leafs. Back in 93, we were trailing 0-2 against the Nordique. We were able to turn that series around, and that gave us a lot of momentum. That's what seems to happen to the Montreal Canadiens. After that, of course, the performance in overtime, even though they lost their last one, they've been very good at it. A solid contender, but mostly what I can see is the level of play as a team. They seems to grow on a daily basis. Everybody is in charge of their role. Their contribution from everyone is tremendous. And for me, this is what happened in 1993. It's tough to believe that 28 years ago we won the last Stanley Cup for the Montreal Canadiens. It's been too long, and in those 28 years, the Habs didn't really have a real chance. But this time, I can feel the excitement, and I'm excited about it. So yes, I'm crossing my finger that we're going to be able to pass the torch to a new edition. It's fun to serve on a wave like this, but not for 28 years.
Montreal police deployed tear gas in the city's downtown on Thursday to disperse crowds shortly after the Habs' victory over the Las Vegas Golden Knights. While the Bell Center was on near maximum capacity due to public health restrictions, people packed into the streets surrounding the arena. When the puck fell inside, fans set off fireworks outside and did so throughout the game. People were climbing on lampposts and building ledges, drinking in the streets and cheering throughout the game as police closed off a perimeter and eventually stopped letting people near the Bell Center. Then forward Arturi Lehkonen scored in overtime, clinching the Habs' spot in the final for the first time since 1993. Shortly after the winning goal, Canadiens owner Geoff Molson spoke to spectators in the Bell Center, asking them to stay indoors for their safety. Montreal Police spokesperson Constable Manuel Couture said at around 11:15 p.m. there was aggression toward police officers with projectiles thrown toward them and at buildings. Saskatchewan First Nation announced the discovery of 751 unmarked graves near former residential school. Quebec's First Nation Chief Cadmus Delorme explained what led to the discovery of 751 unmarked graves at the site of the former Maraval Indian Residential School located about 140 kilometers east of Regina, which operated from 1899 to 1997.
That is when the grave site began. In 1898, the Maraval Residential School opened its doors, and it closed its doors in 1996. The Roman Catholic Church overseen the grave site. The Catholics and the prayer and religion overseen the grave site. We started our radar penetrating research on June the 2nd of 2021. As of yesterday, we have hit 751 unmarked graves. This is not a mass grave site. These are unmarked graves. Over the past years, the oral stories of our elders, of our survivors, and friends of our survivors have told us stories that knew these burials were here. In 1960, there may have been marks on these graves. The Catholic Church representatives removed these headstones, and today they are unmarked graves. At this time, I'm just going to share my screen so you have a visual of what we're talking about. You're going to notice that there are flags, and I apologize, it might be a little tough to see. But this is now today on Cowes First Nation, and this is what we call today our community gravesite. It became our community gravesite after the 1970s, when the residential school was stopped overseen by the Roman Catholic Church and the Archdiocese. We also wanted to show you a little more of the 751 hits. The machine has a 10 to 15% error percentage. So we will only go by the hits that we have of 751, but we do know there's at least 600. You're going to notice that they are in proper order. These that lay here are 1 meter by 1 meter apart in some cases. We cannot affirm that they are all children, but there are oral stories that there are adults in this gravesite as well, because it was the Roman Catholic Church that overseen this gravesite. Some may have went to the church and from our local towns, and they could have been buried here as well. This could be triggering to many, but when you're from Cowes First Nation, or you have attended the Maraval Residential School, which many have in southern Saskatchewan and Manitoba, we always knew that there was graves here. The recent story of the Kamloops Residential School has triggered many in this country, and we knew this was going to trigger as well. There are many agree to disagree from Cowes on the history of this gravesite. But I want to affirm to you, we are talking about unmarked graves. We're not talking about a mass gravesite. today in this country, First Nations people, and this instant Cowses, we've never ever swayed away from who we are as a Nehewak and Anishinaabe people. The Roman Catholic residential school has impacted us intensely. And today we have generations that may have not went to residential school, but they are feeling the first and second generation of that impact. All we ask of all of you listening is that you stand by us as we heal and we get stronger, and that we all must put down our ignorance and accidental racism of not addressing the truth that this country has with Indigenous people. We are not asking for pity, but we are asking for understanding. We need time to heal, and this country must stand by us. We have reached out to the Government of Canada, the Prime Minister, Minister Bennett, Minister Miller, have reached out and told us that they stand beside us in what they can help with today. I have reached out, and they have reached out to me, the Roman Catholic Church, our archdiocese in this region. His name is Don, and we have talked as well. What we are going to be doing now is we are going to be putting names to these unmarked graves. We want to honor our loved ones that lay there today. We want to make sure that we keep that place and preserve it so many could come here and heal. It's going to hurt in the coming months because the more we put names to them, the more that it is going to reopen some of the pains that many endured at the Maryville Residential School are going to reopen. The gravesite is there, and it's real. And if you were to see it, there are 751 flags when you look at it. It is the pain of the memories of being in the school for many that it is triggering. And that's why I thank all of the messages, everyone listening, that I ask you to open your mind that this country needs to have truth and reconciliation. There's going to be many more stories in the future, and this is Cowes' First Nations moment of our truth. In the coming days, we will continue to do our research, and one day there will be a monument there. Every one of those graves will be marked, and probably not every grave will have the exact name, but that is our end goal. I thank you all for giving us this moment to tell our story. And I just want to rephrase, this is not a mass grave site. These are unmarked graves. And we didn't remove these headstones. Removing headstones is a crime in this country. And we are treating this like a crime scene at the moment. And we will know more as we continue our research.
Federation of Sovereign Indigenous First Nations Chief Bobby Cameron said he expects there will be similar discoveries made at other residential school sites. He called the residential school system a crimes against humanity and assaults on First Nations people.
And to all that are on the line that are listening, you have important work to do in terms of getting the message out there for the world to understand what we First Nations have endured for many, many decades within the residential school era, the 60s scoop, the day schools, and currently in the child welfare system, where there has to be and must be immediate change, where our First Nation children come home to our communities and be raised in our communities amongst our own language and culture experts. This was a crime against humanity. an assault on First Nation people. We are proud people. The only crime we ever committed as children was being born Indigenous. A lot of work, a lot of healing will take place. There are many sites that we're going to be doing this similar work, and we will find more. So we ask for each and every one of you to continue to work with us, to continue to pray for us. We call on all levels of government to.
Florence Perver, an 80-year-old survivor of Saskatchewan's Maraval Indian Residential School, says a lot to the pain that Indigenous people feel comes from the raw mean-spiritedness.
I'm 80 years old, and I went to boarding school down there. I was taken by my parents to go. At that time, if the parents didn't want to allow their children to go to boarding school, one of them had to go to jail. So in order that we keep the family together, we went to boarding school. They brought us there, we stayed there. And we learned, they pounded it into us, and really they were very mean. When I say pounding, I mean pounding. Those nuns were very mean to us for, I don't know, I don't think they liked it being there either. But we had to learn how to be Roman Catholic. We couldn't say our own little blessings the way we said it at home. We had our own way of honoring ourselves and Mother Earth in our own homes when we were little, but we had to leave all that after. So when we were taught at home that we had to look after ourselves physically, mental, emotionally, and spiritual. So that got all stripped away when we went to boarding school. They told us what to say. They told us about a new being that was supposed to be our ultimate savior. But the ones we had in our school, they were not nice either. They were very condemning about our people. They told us our people, our parents and grandparents had no. They didn't have a way to be spiritual because we were all heathens. And I was the third one in my family that went to that school. My grandmother went, and my mother and me. So they were still teaching that all the time. So they were putting us down as a people. So we learned how to not like who we were. And that has gone on and on, and it's still going on, because we couldn't teach our people, our own families, how to look after themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritual. They made us, when we became assimilated, they made us think different and feel different. So it's a lot of the pain that we see in our people right now.
Residential school survivor Carrie Banjo explains why bricks recovered from the former Maraval Indian Residential School and Saskatchewan are significant to survivors of that institution.
They're significant to the survivors because one lady shared a story with me that when the school was torn down, those who were tearing it down found bricks with names of children etched into the bricks because these schools were places where there was no place to play. So they would sneak and play and frolic when they could, and they would hide, and so some of these students would climb to the top of the school, and when they were up there, they etched their names in bricks. So when this building was torn down, some of the workers found these bricks with names, and they passed it on to families so that they can have a reminder of that history. I myself have a brick. I visited my former school last year. It was the first time I ever returned, and by some chance I found a brick and I kept it with me. And it's really significant because at the signing of the treaties, one of the negotiations was for a little red brick schoolhouse on every reserve. And what we got were residential schools. And I think they were purposely built with these bricks, these red bricks. And it's really upsetting to know that history and to be part of it, and still here and still.
With 30 days before the start, Canadian athletes are preparing for a Tokyo Olympics that will be quieter and a lot more controlled than previous games.
Take your marks.
The games start in a month, but because of the pandemic delays, many athletes are still competing for their ticket to Tokyo. What the games will look like.
Mom and Dad are certainly happy with that.
Family cheering on athletes virtually, with limited spectators in the stands. Concerns over COVID have led to a ban on foreign fans in Tokyo. For domestic spectators, the venues will have a 50% capacity limit, and they will be a lot quieter. Today, organizers announced shouting and whistling will be off limits. Clapping will be the only way to cheer. Already, there is a COVID case linked to the games. A member of the Ugandan team tested positive on arrival in Tokyo.
No question, McBean and Heddle, the heavy favorites here. And
Marnie McBean is a three-time Olympic gold medalist and the chef de mission for Tokyo. She says the protocols are unprecedented. But the logistics aren't top of mind for athletes busy training. Jessica Klimkate is a judo medal hopeful after winning gold at the World Championships. She is just happy to head to her first Olympics, despite the circumstances. Win or lose, these will be a games like none other.
Summer McIntosh, 14, reacts to being named to Canada's Olympic swim team. She'll be the youngest member of the team competing at the Tokyo Games.
McIntosh, the 14-year-old, gets the Olympic A standard and wins the Olympic trials.
This was the moment McIntosh knew she had qualified to be nominated for the Olympic Games.
It's so surreal. The whole race feels like a blur, like the whole warm-up leading into it and afterwards. It's just one big blur, and it's so exciting.
Today, Canada's swim team was officially announced. The 14-year-old told us how she feels about heading to Tokyo as Canada's youngest Olympic swimmer.
It's a little bit nerve-wracking, but the people that I'm surrounded with are basically like my second family. It just hasn't sunk in yet, to be honest. It's sunk in a bit more than since right after my race, but it's still just really crazy. On the international level, most people just don't focus on age because, it's just all about the time. But I don't know. I just feel like I've already had some quite amazing experiences with such big names in the swimming world that my nerves will be pretty low. I don't think it'll be too intimidating. I'm just really excited to represent Canada because I've never got the opportunity to represent Canada ever on the international stage. So I'm just really excited to have a bunch of cool experiences with some amazing people.
Canadian basketball player Kim Gosher says she is being forced between going to the Olympics and caring for her infant daughter, who she is still breastfeeding but can't bring to the games.
Ball player Kim Gosher doesn't want to make going to the Olympics or staying home with her 3-month-old daughter Sophie, who's still nursing. Gosher is headed to Florida for training.
She does!
This would be her third games, a chance to finally get on the podium. But Japan has banned family members because of the pandemic, including her baby. In a joint statement, the Canadian Olympic Committee and Canada Basketball says they recognize how difficult the situation is and have made an appeal to the Tokyo 2020 Organizing Committee. But the organizing committee has not responded to her appeal or that of other mothers in similar situations. U.S. marathon runner Alafine Tuliamuk has also petitioned to bring her baby. Tennis superstar Serena Williams has said if her young daughter can't come, she likely won't go to Tokyo. Gaucher and other women are hoping organizers will see that, giving her a chance to score one more time for Canada as a mom.
The Union of British Columbia Indian Chiefs is calling on Federal Minister Carol Bennett to resign from cabinet after sending what it describes as a racist, demeaning message to Indigenous MP Jody Wilson-Raybould. Bennett, the Federal Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, apologized publicly Thursday after suggesting Wilson-Raybould's concern over residential schools and Indigenous rights was really a ploy to secure a generous pension. Bennett sent a text message with the word pension to Wilson-Raybould in response to a tweet from the independent Vancouver MP criticizing Justin Trudeau for his lack of action on Indigenous rights legislation. The UBCIC stated in an open letter that an apology is not sufficient amends for the extreme closeness, spite and ignorance shown through the racist message. You're implying that MP Wilson-Raybould's thirst for equality and justice is only motivated by a pension is categorically untrue. Misogynistic and condemnable, reads the letter signed by Indigenous chiefs Stewart Phillip, Don Tom and Judy Wilson. Bennett perpetuated a racist stereotype that Indigenous peoples are lazy and only financially motivated. Wilson-Raybould made similar claims earlier Thursday, adding that the text message suggested that a strong Indigenous woman is a bad Indigenous woman. The winner of Canada's Drag Race, Priyanka, the Lies of Mark Suknanan, is the first drag queen to be featured on a national Canadian magazine cover.
And with Priyanka now appearing on the cover of Elle Canada, more people are about to know her face. Priyanka, the alias of one-time YTV host Mark Suknanan, is on the cover of a national fashion magazine in Canada, one of the first in the world. But drag's mainstream popularity is a recent phenomenon.
Good luck.
A lot of it has to do with the reality competition, RuPaul's Drag Race.
All I need is a crown.
Which puts drag queens front and center and draws huge audiences in the US and through its franchises around the world.
Beijing is calling on the United Nations to investigate crime against Indigenous people in Canada in response to Ottawa's call for an international probe into China's human rights violations in Xinjiang.
It's not the first time China's brushed away charges of cultural genocide in its growing network of Xinjiang re-education camps by pointing the finger at Canada's history of residential schools, both labeled as attempts to wipe out minorities. With a preemptive "what about Canada" charge to be forcing Uyghur women to have fewer babies, and children have disappeared. Beijing denies it, but Uyghur mothers now in Turkey have been marching to demand their children back. "Won't they let me see them?" says Kalvina Tursun. Today, Canada led 44 countries at the UN in a demand for an official investigation, something Beijing has rejected. As for the comparison to Canada's acknowledged injustices,
in Canada, we had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Where is China's Truth and Reconciliation Commission?
that sharper than usual criticism of China in Ottawa is often seen as hurting Canada's chances of winning freedom for the jailed Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. Not so, says former diplomat Charles Burton, is keeping up the pressure, regardless of Beijing's response.
Ahead of the House of Commons summer break, the rhetoric from all parties sounded similar to campaigning, further adding to speculation about a fall election.
This was not just the House rising for the summer, but that they may have to fight to return to the job at all.
Canadians deserve accountability, transparency, and ethics. That is what they will get from a Conservative government.
Canadians want politicians to be focused on them, on their needs. And that's what we've done every step of the way.
This Prime Minister has often said he's got the backs of Canadians. It's not having their backs to cut the help they need while we are still in this pandemic.
In a caucus speech that could well have been an election rally, the official opposition leader drew battle lines.
Four parties on the left, the Liberals, the NDP, the Greens, and the Bloc Québécois, give the illusion of choice. It's an agenda of four shades of red.
That political divide, just about the only thing he and Justin Trudeau seem to agree on.
I hope that parties that call themselves progressive, like the Bloc and the NDP, will work with us. The Conservative Party is still doing everything they can to block this very important work.
But though opinion polls have shown the Liberals leading since the start of the pandemic, some warn there's a danger in pulling a trigger too soon.
This is Voice of Canada. For further update and details, visit our website voiceofcanada.tv.